The scent of fear hung thick in the ceremonial hall of Ravenmore Keep, mixing with burning sage and the metallic tang of blood from the binding stones. Lirali pressed herself against the cold marble pillar, wishing she could disappear into the shadows as hundreds of eyes watched the moonrise selection unfold before them. Next eligible female, the herald's voice boomed across the vaulted chamber, Lirali of House Thornwood. Her stomach dropped. Whispers erupted like wildfire through the gathered crowd. The cursed daughter? 23, and still unmated. No wolf has ever accepted her scent. Lirali forced her legs to move, each step toward the selection platform feeling like walking to her execution. Her mother had made it clear this morning. Either find a mate tonight at the kingdom's grand selection ceremony, or be cast out as packless. At her age, having been rejected by every eligible wolf in their middle-tier house, this public selection was her last chance. From the family section, she caught her father's gaze, not disappointed as she'd expected, but oddly calculating, as if watching pieces move on a chessboard only he could see. The platform held 7 males, each from different ranks as tradition demanded. 6 stood proud in their designated circles: warriors, merchants, craftsmen, their wolves' power radiating from them in waves, visible to those with the sight. The 7th circle, meant for servants and laborers, held only one figure. He stood apart from the others, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. Where the others wore fine leather and ceremonial armor, he dressed in rough spun gray that marked him as kitchen staff. Dirt smudged his jaw. His dark hair fell unkempt across his forehead, obscuring much of his face. When the crowd noticed him, their whispers turned cruel. Did they drag him from the scullery? Probably can't even shift properly. What an insult to the ceremony. Lirali's gaze swept across her options. The warrior, Cassius, stood tallest, brutal and magnificent, already promised privately to 3 other females who would choose after her. The merchant's son gleamed with gold threads in his coat, his interested gaze making her skin crawl as he assessed her like livestock. Each male represented a different level of humiliation for her to endure, knowing they would accept her only out of obligation to ceremony, not desire. Her younger sister Rosalie watched from the family section, hands clasped nervously. At 17, Rosalie would face her own selection next year, though, unlike Lirali, she had wolves already courting her. Lirali's eyes returned to the servant. He hadn't looked up once, hadn't preened or displayed like the others. His hands, she noticed, bore old burns and calluses from menial work. Everything about him suggested weakness, submission, the absolute bottom of pack hierarchy. "Choose quickly, girl," Matron Corvina sneered from her elevated throne. "We haven't all night to waste on the cursed daughter." Lirali's cheeks burned. She could feel Rosalie's sympathetic gaze, her father's strange intensity, her mother's desperate hope. "I choose." Her voice cracked. The warrior was already stepping forward, expecting the obvious choice. The merchant's son straightened his gold collar. Something deep in her chest pulled her attention back to the gray-clad figure. When she looked at him this time, he had raised his head just slightly. Through the curtain of dark hair, she glimpsed eyes the color of winter honey, unusual, striking against his dirt-smudged face. Those eyes held something she recognized. Resignation, acceptance of humiliation, the same emotions drowning her. "I choose the servant," she said, loud enough for all to hear. The hall erupted in shocked gasps and then, worse, laughter. "She chooses the kitchen mutt? How fitting, the rejected choosing the pathetic. At least they match in their worthlessness." The servant's head snapped up fully, and for just a moment, Lirali saw shock flicker across his features. He had sharp cheekbones beneath the dirt, a strong jaw despite his submissive posture. Their eyes met across the platform, and something electric passed between them, gone before she could name it. "You cannot be serious." Matron Corvina stood, her authority challenged by this unexpected choice. Think carefully, girl. This is your last chance at a mate bond. Choose someone with actual standing. I've made my choice, Lyra Lee interrupted, her sudden defiance surprising everyone, including herself. Unless the ceremony laws have changed, any female may choose any presented male. The servant moved then, stepping forward from his circle with fluid grace that seemed at odds with his humble appearance. As he approached, Lirali caught his scent for the first time. Pine smoke and winter storms, with something underneath that made her wolf stir in a way it never had before. "Your name?" she asked when he stopped before her. "Kale," he said quietly. His voice was deeper than expected, cultured despite his appearance. "I serve in the lower kitchens." "Well then, Kale of the kitchens," Lyrelai said, lifting her chin despite the humiliation burning through her. "Will you accept my selection?" His golden brown eyes studied her for a long moment. The crowd had grown quiet, waiting for this final humiliation. Surely even a servant would reject the cursed daughter. "I accept," he said simply. More gasps. Someone actually laughed outright. "Then bare your throat," the herald commanded, though his voice carried disgust. "Let her mark you if her weak wolf even can." Kale tilted his head, exposing the strong column of his throat. This close, Lirali could see a thin scar running along his collarbone, old and silvered. Her wolf pushed forward, suddenly eager in a way that confused her. She'd never been able to complete a practice bite. Her wolf always retreating at the crucial moment, the source of her cursed reputation. "I'm sorry," she whispered, meant only for him. "This shames us both." Something flickered in his eyes, not agreement, but something fiercer, almost protective. "There's no shame in survival," he murmured back. Lyrelai let her wolf rise to the surface, felt her canines lengthen. The crowd waited for her to fail, as she had in every practice ceremony. But as she leaned toward his throat, his scent overwhelmed her. Not the scent of a servant at all, but something wild and ancient and powerful, carefully masked beneath common soap and kitchen smoke. Her teeth found his throat easily, naturally, as if they'd done this 1,000 times before. The moment she bit down, the world exploded. Power, raw, untamed, impossible power, flooded through the connection. Not from her to him, but from him into her. Her wolf howled in recognition, in triumph, in something that felt dangerously like coming home. She tasted not copper but lightning, not submission, but carefully controlled dominance. Kale's body went rigid against hers, a low growl rumbling from his chest that made every wolf in the hall step back instinctively. His arms came around her, not in embrace, but in restraint, holding her against him as she drank in his essence through the bite. "Enough," he commanded softly, and her wolf obeyed instantly, something that should have been impossible. Only an alpha's command could override a mating bite in progress. Lyrelai pulled back, blood on her lips, staring at him in shock. The hall had gone deathly silent. Every wolf present could feel it, the power that had just passed between them, the wrongness of what should have been a weak bond. "What are you?" she breathed. Kale's eyes held hers, and for one moment, she saw something ancient looking back, something that wore the servant's clothes like an ill-fitting costume. Then he lowered his gaze again, shoulders hunching back into submission. "Yours, apparently," he said quietly, but there was something in his tone that made it sound more like a promise than submission. "The bond is sealed," the herald announced, though his voice shook. "May the Moon Mother help them both." As Kale took her hand to lead her from the platform, his touch gentle despite the calluses, Lyrelai noticed something that made her blood chill. Every servant in the hall, the ones holding wine, tending fires, standing in shadows, had gone perfectly still, their eyes fixed on Kale with expressions of reverence quickly hidden. Her father watched them leave with an expression she couldn't read, satisfaction mixed with something else, calculation. as if his greatest gamble had just paid off. Walking beside her new mate toward their fate, one thought consumed her. Kitchen servants didn't have eyes that could command a room. They didn't have sense that could make an alpha's daughter weak at the knees. And they certainly didn't have the kind of power that had just roared through her blood during that bite. What had she actually chosen? Or more terrifyingly, had this always been someone else's plan? The servants' quarters sat in the eastern wing's lower level, built into the mountain's natural cave system where dampness clung to stone walls. Lirelai followed Kale through corridors lit by sparse torches, the sounds of the selection ceremony fading behind them. Neither had spoken since leaving the hall, but she could still taste his blood on her tongue, wild and wrong and addictive. "These are my rooms," Kale said, stopping before a weathered door. "I know they're not what you're accustomed to." "They're fine," Lyra Lee interrupted. Anything was better than facing her family tonight, especially her father's calculating gaze. The space was smaller than her dressing chamber at home, a single room with a narrow bed, a washing basin, and a window that looked out onto the kitchen waste yard. But it was scrupulously clean, and something about its simplicity felt oddly peaceful. Books lined one wall, far more than a servant should own. "You can have the bed," Kale said, already pulling blankets from a chest to make a pallet on the floor. "Tomorrow, we'll petition for proper mated quarters." "Stop." The command left her before she could think. He froze immediately, that instant obedience again, that felt wrong from someone who radiated such carefully hidden power. "We need to discuss what happened up there. You selected me. I accepted. We're mated." He kept his back to her, continuing to arrange the blankets. "Don't." Lyra Lee moved closer, her wolf pushing her forward. "When I bit you, I felt... You felt a bond forming. It's natural." "I felt power that could level mountains." The words exploded from her. "Power that no servant possesses. Power that made every wolf in that hall instinctively submit, even if they didn't realize it." Kale went very still. When he turned, his honey gold eyes held warning. "You're overwhelmed. The mating bite can be intense." "My wolf recognized yours." She stepped closer, close enough to catch his true scent again, that intoxicating mixture of wildness and nobility. "Recognized it as something far beyond what you pretend to be." "Lyrelai, every servant in that hall looked at you like you were their king." The silence stretched between them, charged with dangerous truth. Finally, Kyle sat on the edge of the narrow bed, his facade of submission cracking slightly. "What do you want me to say?" he asked quietly. "That I'm not what I appear? That would put you in danger you can't imagine." "I'm already in danger. I'm mated to you." She sat beside him, careful not to touch. This close, she could see the fine lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the careful way he held himself to appear smaller than his actual height. "Why were you there tonight? Why allow yourself to be displayed like that?" "I had no choice." His hands clenched in his lap. "The ceremony requires 7 males. When the 7th declined to participate, they needed a replacement. So they dragged a servant from the kitchens?" A bitter smile touched his lips. "Something like that." Lyrelai studied his profile, the aristocratic nose, the proud jaw he kept carefully tucked. "You're highborn. Everything about you screams it despite the dirt and submission." "Was highborn," he corrected softly. "Now I serve. That's all that matters." "Not to my wolf. She thinks..." Lyra Lee stopped, embarrassed by what her wolf was insisting. "What does she think?" "That you're hers to protect. Which makes no sense because you're clearly stronger than..." She gasped as his hand covered hers, the touch sending electricity through her entire body. "Your wolf is very wise," he murmured, and for a moment, his careful mask slipped entirely. She saw raw hunger in his eyes, possession, and something that looked impossibly like reverence. Then he pulled away, standing abruptly. You should rest. Tomorrow will bring challenges. My sister will worry, Lyrelei said suddenly, remembering Rosalie's anxious face at the ceremony. She's only 17, and this scandal will affect her prospects next year. I'll send word that you're safe, Kale promised. The servants' network can be efficient. Before she could ask what he meant, violent pounding shook the door. Open up, kitchen mutt. The voice belonged to Cassius, the warrior from the selection. I would speak with your so-called mate. Kale's entire demeanor shifted. Though his posture remained submissive, something lethal entered his eyes. Stay behind me, he said quietly, moving to the door. He opened it to find not just Cassius but 3 other warriors, all drunk on ceremonial wine and rage. There's been a mistake, Cassius announced, pushing into the room. The cursed daughter was meant to choose me, Lord Thornwood promised. The selection is sacred and final, Kale said mildly, though Lyrelei noticed his weight shift to the balls of his feet. Her father had promised her to Cassius? The betrayal stung, but somehow didn't surprise her. Don't speak to me, servant. Cassius backhanded Kale casually, the blow snapping his head to the side. Blood welled at the corner of his mouth. I'm taking her. You can have what's left when I'm done proving she should have chosen better. Lyrelei started forward, but Kale's hand moved behind his back, fingers splayed in a clear signal to stay put. I said. Cassius grabbed Kale's throat. You can have what's... The change happened between heartbeats. One moment, Kale stood passive in the warrior's grip. The next, Cassius was on his knees, arm bent at an impossible angle, screaming. You will not touch her. Kale's voice had dropped to something inhuman, something that made every wolf in the room whine in submission. You will not speak to her. You will not even look at her. Am I understood? The warriors who'd come to support Cassius were pressed against the walls, unable to move, held by nothing but the command in that voice. Lyrelei felt it too, the absolute authority that demanded obedience. You can't be... Cassius gasped through his pain. I'm her mate, Kale said simply, releasing him. Nothing more. Nothing less. Cassius scrambled backward, clutching his injured arm. His eyes were wide with terror and something else. Recognition. The Northern Kingdoms. You're from the Northern Kingdoms. We heard rumors, but... You heard nothing. Again that voice of absolute command. You came here drunk and fell down the stairs. Your arm broke in the fall. My arm broke in the fall, Cassius repeated blankly, his eyes glazing. Leave. Now. All 4 warriors fled, Cassius cradling his arm, none of them looking back. Kale closed the door and leaned against it, the brief display of power vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. When he turned to Lyrelei, his eyes held apology. I shouldn't have done that. You're an alpha. It wasn't a question. The power she'd witnessed could be nothing else. Not just an alpha. You're something more. I'm your mate, he said firmly. That's all that matters now. Why hide here? Why pretend? Because the alternative is death. For me and anyone connected to me. He moved to the window, checking the locks with practiced efficiency. Including you now. Especially you. Who are you? She whispered. He turned to her, and in the moonlight streaming through the small window, she saw the truth written in every line of his body. Royalty in hiding, power in chains, a predator pretending to be prey. I'm Kale, he said softly, kitchen servant of Ravenmoor Keep. Your mate, if you'll have me despite what you've seen. And if I want the truth? Then I'd tell you the truth will likely get us both killed before the next moon. Looking at him standing there, dangerous and vulnerable in equal measure, Lyrelei made her choice. Then we keep your truth buried. For now. Relief flickered across his features. Thank you. But Kyle? She moved to the bed, suddenly exhausted. My wolf knows what you are. She's known since the moment I bit you, and she's not afraid. What is she then? Yours, Lirali admitted, the word carrying more weight than it should. Completely, irrevocably yours. 3 days passed in strange domesticity. Lyrelai learned Kale's routine, rising before dawn for kitchen duties, returning after midnight reeking of smoke and grease. She'd offered to help, but he'd refused, with such vehemence she hadn't asked again. Instead, she spent her days avoiding her family's summons and discovering oddities about her mate. He spoke 4 languages in his sleep. His hands bore calluses not from kitchen work, but from sword work, carefully maintained with pumice to look more servant-like. And every night, he sat by the window for exactly 1 hour, watching the moon with an expression of such longing it made her chest ache. A message had come from Rosalie on the 2nd day, passed through the servants. Father is furious, mother weeps, but I'm proud of you for choosing your own path. Be happy, sister. On the 3rd night, Lirali woke to find him gone. The door stood slightly ajar, cold mountain air seeping in. Lyrelai wrapped herself in his cloak, which smelled intoxicatingly of him, and followed his scent through the servants' corridors. It led her deeper into the mountain, through passages she hadn't known existed, until she heard voices ahead. Movements are tracked. The moment you surface, they'll know. An unfamiliar male voice, gravelly with age. I can't stay hidden forever, Marcus. Kale's voice, but different. Commanding, regal, nothing like the subdued servant tone. My people need. Your people need you alive. The usurper's assassins have already found me. Why do you think I allowed myself to be mated? Lyrelai's blood chilled. She pressed closer to the tunnel wall, straining to hear. The girl is leverage against you now, Marcus argued. The girl is the only thing keeping me hidden. No one looks for an alpha king among mated servants. Alpha king! The words echoed in Lyrelai's mind as understanding crashed over her. Not just an alpha. The Alpha King, the legendary ruler of the Northern Territories who disappeared 3 moons ago, whose throne had been seized by his brother in the bloodiest coup their world had seen. Therion, she breathed, the name barely a whisper. Both voices stopped. Then footsteps, swift and sure. Kale, Therion, appeared in the tunnel, his wolf-bright eyes wild with panic. Lirelai, Alpha King Therion Nightfall. She said his full name, watching him flinch. They say you died when your brother stormed Ironhold Citadel. Say he displayed your head on the gates. Obviously exaggerated, he said carefully, watching her like one might watch a spooked horse. Your brother rules now. Darius the Bloodstained, they call him. She pulled his cloak tighter around herself. He's hunting you. Yes. And you're hiding here as a kitchen servant because no one would think to look for a king among the ashes and grease. Yes. And you mated me because... The words stuck in her throat. Because you chose me. His voice went soft, urgent. I didn't plan it, Lyrelai. When you looked at me on that platform, when you chose me despite everything. He stepped closer and she could see the truth in his eyes. I couldn't let you suffer that humiliation alone. And then, when you bit me, your wolf recognized mine despite all my barriers and You used me. No. The denial was fierce. Never that. The bond is real. What I feel is real. What you feel? She laughed bitterly. You're a king in exile and I'm the cursed daughter no one wanted. My own father tried to sell me to Cassius. What could you possibly feel? He moved then, faster than sight, pressing her against the tunnel wall. His hands braced on either side of her head, his body caging hers without touching. Want, he growled, and his eyes flickered gold, his wolf rising. Need. A recognition so deep my wolf howls for yours every moment we're apart. You think you chose me? My wolf chose you the instant you entered that hall. Fought every barrier I'd erected to hide what I am because it recognized its mate. You're lying. I'm the Alpha King. I could have anyone. I've had noble females throw themselves at my feet, offering political alliances, perfect bloodlines, armies for dowries. His head dropped, his breath hot against her neck. None of them made my wolf even stir. Then you, cursed, rejected, brave enough to choose the lowest option rather than submit to humiliation, you walked in, and my wolf nearly tore free of my skin trying to get to you. Lyrelai's wolf rose to meet his, pressing against her skin from the inside, desperate for contact. This is insane. This is fate. He pulled back to look at her, and she saw vulnerability there that no king should show. I should send you away. Should have the bond severed for your safety. Darius will kill anyone I've touched. Then why don't you? Because I'm selfish. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb tracing her lower lip. Because for 3 days I've had something I never thought I'd find. A mate who sees me, not the crown, not the power, just me. I don't even know you. You know enough. You know I submit to no one but you. You know your wolf owns mine completely. His forehead touched hers. You know I would burn kingdoms to keep you safe. Before she could respond, Marcus appeared in the tunnel. An elderly wolf with scars covering half his face, he radiated the steady strength of a beta. My king, he said urgently. Scouts report movement. Your brother's assassins have entered the valley. Therion, she couldn't think of him as Kale anymore, straightened. Every inch the Alpha King despite his servant's clothes. How many? 6 teams. They're checking every pack systematically. They'll reach Ravenmoor within days. He turned to Lyrelai. You need to leave. Tonight. Marcus will take you south. No. Both males looked at her in surprise. I'm your mate, she said firmly, surprising herself with her conviction. Where you go, I go. What hunts you, hunts me. Lyrelai. Unless... The thought struck like lightning. Unless you're planning to dissolve our bond? An Alpha King could do that. His eyes flashed pure gold. Never. Then we face this together. Marcus cleared his throat. My lady, with respect, you don't understand what's coming. Darius doesn't just kill. He breaks everything his brother loved. Then he's already lost. Lyrelai stepped past them both, heading back toward their room. Because Therion loves nothing, he's made sure of that. He's hidden everything, including his heart. Not everything, Therion said quietly. She turned back. He stood in the tunnel, moonlight from some hidden opening illuminating him. For a moment she saw him as he truly was, powerful, beautiful, terrible, and hers. Not you, he continued. I couldn't hide from you. Good. She pulled his cloak tighter. Because when your brother comes, he'll learn that the cursed daughter is far more dangerous than any assassin. As she walked away, she heard Marcus whisper, She doesn't know, does she? What her bloodline carries? No, Therion replied. But she will soon. The bite is already awakening it. Lyrelai kept walking, but her wolf heard every word. Whatever power slept in her blood, whatever reason her wolf recognized an Alpha King as its equal, she would discover it. Her father's calculated gaze at the ceremony suddenly made terrible sense. He'd known. Somehow, he'd always known. And when Darius came for her mate, they would all learn why even cursed daughters could topple kingdoms when defending what was theirs. The assassins arrived with the morning mist, silent as death itself. Lyrelai woke to Therion's hand over her mouth, his eyes pure gold in the darkness. 6 heartbeats outside, he whispered against her ear. When I move, you run for the tunnel. She nodded, but her wolf had other plans. The moment Therion released her, moving toward the door with lethal intent, Pain exploded through her body. Not an attack. Something far worse. Her bones began to crack and reshape, her skin burning as if lit from within. No, 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 she gasped, falling to her knees. Not now. The door exploded inward. Black-clad figures poured in, silver weapons gleaming. Therion moved like liquid death, but even he couldn't fight 6 trained assassins while she writhed on the floor, her body betraying her at the worst possible moment. "The girl," one assassin barked. "She's turning." First transformation by the look of it. "Impossible," another said. "She's past the age." "If she hasn't shifted by now?" "Unless she's dormant bloodline." The lead assassin pulled back his hood, revealing features eerily similar to Therion's, but crueler. "Hello, brother." Darius. Therion positioned himself between his brother and Lirali's convulsing form. "This isn't about her. Everything you touch is about her now." Darius smiled, cold and sharp. "Did you think I wouldn't know the moment you took a mate?" The bond sends ripples through pack magic. Every alpha felt it. The Lost King finally claiming someone. Lyralay screamed as another wave of agony crashed through her. Her vision flickered between human sight and something else. Something that saw heat signatures and magic patterns. Through the pain, she saw something impossible. Golden threads connecting her to Therion, but also silver threads reaching out to every wolf in the room, including Darius. "Fascinating," Darius murmured, noticing her focus. "She really doesn't know, does she? You mated her without telling her what she is." "Leave her alone," Therion snarled. "The last female of the Moonweaver line, and you found her hiding in plain sight. A cursed daughter whose own father bound her powers to keep her hidden." How poetic. The fallen king and the dormant queen. Moonweaver. The word echoed through Lyralay's breaking mind. Ancient memories that weren't hers flooded in. Wolves the size of horses. Magic that could bind or break pack bonds. The power to make or unmake alphas with a bite. "That's why," she gasped through the pain. "Why they called me cursed. Why no wolf could approach me. They sensed what I was. Father knew. He always knew." "What you could become," Darius corrected. "Lord Thornwood played a long game, waiting for the right moment to unlock your power. But first transformations at your age? 90% fatal. Add in the trauma of a forced shift during an attack." He made a tisking sound. "She'll be dead within the hour." Therion moved so fast Liralai barely saw it. His hand wrapped around his brother's throat, lifting him off the ground. "Fix this." "Can't fix nature, brother." Darius smiled even while choking. "But I'll make you a deal. Surrender your claim to the throne, acknowledge me as rightful Alpha King, and I'll have my healers ease her passing. Refuse, and I'll make sure her death takes days." Liralai tried to protest, but only managed to scream as her spine began to elongate. Through the haze of agony, she heard Therion's response. "I accept." "No." She forced the word past lengthening teeth. "Smart choice." Darius dropped to his feet as Therion released him. "Say it properly." The formal words. "I, Therion Nightfall, last of the pure line, renounce my claim." The change hit Lyralai like lightning. But instead of driving her toward wolf form, it pulled her somewhere else entirely. She felt herself rising, floating, existing in 2 places at once. Her human body remained on the floor, but her consciousness expanded, touching every wolf thread she could see. Power flooded through her, not her own, but borrowed from every wolf her threads touched. She saw through 100 eyes, felt 100 hearts beating. And she understood with crystal clarity what the Moonweaver line could do. "Stop!" she commanded, her voice echoing with harmonics that shouldn't exist. Everyone in the room froze, even Darius, especially Therion. She'd pulled their wolf spirits partially into her web, holding them like a spider holds flies. "You will not renounce anything," she told Therion, struggling to maintain the power that wanted to tear her apart. And you. She turned her attention to Darius, saw him flinch as her power touched his core. You're not the rightful anything. You're a parasite who killed his own father to steal a throne. You can't hold this, Darius said through gritted teeth. A Moonweaver needs training, control. You'll burn yourself out in minutes. He was right. She could feel her life force depleting rapidly, consumed by power she didn't know how to channel. But she also felt something else. Therion's thread, golden and warm, pulsing with desperate love. Then I'll make these minutes count. She pulled harder on Darius's thread, saw his eyes widen in real fear. Leave. Now. Don't come back. If you do, I'll unravel your wolf from your soul and leave you truly powerless. You wouldn't dare. She pulled harder. Darius screamed, his form flickering between human and wolf uncontrollably. Gone. Now. Darius and his assassins fled, stumbling over each other in their haste. The moment they left, Lyra Lee's power shattered like glass. She collapsed, her body seizing as the interrupted transformation tried to resume. Don't fight it. Therion gathered her into his arms. Let the wolf come. Can't. Blood frothed at her lips. Too late. Never too late. He bit his own wrist, pressing the bleeding wound to her mouth. Drink. Alpha King blood might be enough to. She drank instinctively, her wolf desperate for any anchor. His blood tasted of power and home and mate. It flooded through her system like liquid fire, but instead of burning, it soothed the chaotic energy tearing her apart. That's it, he murmured, holding her as she drank. Take what you need. Take everything. The pain began to recede, replaced by something else. Connection. Through his blood she felt his memories, his power, his absolute devotion to her. She saw herself through his eyes, not cursed but blessed, not weak but containing power that terrified Alpha Kings. Mine, her wolf whispered through the bond. Yours, his wolf answered. Always, eternally yours. Lyrelei existed in a space between waking and sleeping, between human and wolf, between living and dying. Therion's blood had stabilized her failed transformation, but her body remained suspended in an agonizing limbo. 3 days had passed. She knew only because she could hear voices discussing it. She should be dead, Marcus said somewhere nearby. No one survives a partial shift this long. She's not no one, Therion replied, exhaustion heavy in his voice. She's Moonweaver. The last Moonweaver died 40 years ago. The line was thought extinct. Hidden, not extinct. Lord Thornwood bound her wolf to protect her, or to save her as a weapon for the right moment. That's why she never shifted naturally. Lyra Lee wanted to speak, to tell them she could hear everything, but her body wouldn't obey. She was trapped, watching through eyes that wouldn't open, feeling through skin that wasn't quite human anymore. A new voice entered, young, female, worried. How is she? Rosalie. Her sister had come despite the danger. Stable but unresponsive, Therion answered gently. I'm sorry you have to see her like this. Father forbade me from coming, Rosalie said defiantly. But he's the one who did this to her, isn't he? Binding her powers, arranging for her to be at that ceremony, knowing who you really were. You knew? Marcus sounded shocked. I suspected. Father's been meeting with strange wolves for months, studying bloodline records. He was obsessed with something he called the convergence. On the 4th night, Therion broke. Lyrali felt him collapse beside her still form, his composure finally shattering. Please, he whispered against her throat, please come back to me. I'll give up the throne, the kingdom, everything. Just come back. His tears fell on her skin, each drop burning like acid and soothing like balm simultaneously. Through their bond, she felt his anguish, a pain so deep it threatened to tear his wolf apart. I was wrong to hide, he continued, unaware she could hear. Wrong to pretend I could be just Kale. You deserve truth from the beginning. You deserve to know that my brother killed our father, that I ran rather than face him, that I'm a coward who hid in kitchens while my people suffered. Not coward, she wanted to say. Survivor. You saved me. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. When you chose me at the selection, you saved me from becoming nothing more than my hatred. When you stood against Darius, you showed me what real courage looks like. A knock interrupted his confession. My king, Marcus called. The matron Corvina is here with the council. They demand to see her. Lyrelai felt Therion tense. Tell them no. They're saying if the Moonweaver dies, you killed the last chance for balance among the packs. Through her enhanced hearing, Lyrali caught Corvina's voice in the corridor. I knew her mother. Knew what bloodline that child carried. We helped Thornwood bind it to protect her, never knowing he planned to use her as a weapon. Therion stood slowly, and Lyrali felt his rage building, not hot, but cold, the kind that preceded calculated violence. Let them in, he said too quietly. The door opened, and multiple footsteps entered. Lyrali smelled various pack leaders, their scents mixing with fear and anger. This is what comes of Thornwood's manipulations, Corvina announced. He triggered her transformation without preparation, without the rituals, using you as the catalyst. He's killed his own daughter for power. She's not dead, Therion said. Not yet. But look at her, suspended between forms, her spirit partially severed from her body. Even if she wakes, she'll likely be mad. Then help her. I can't. Only she can choose to complete the transformation now. But why would she? She's been betrayed by her father, used by fate, thrown into a battle she never chose. Each word was true, and Lyrelai felt them hit Therion like physical blows through their bond. There is one way, Elder Thaddeus said, entering the room. The Luna's call. If she truly is Moonweaver, if the bond is true, she might respond to her mate's wolf calling her home. That's myth, Corvina snapped. So were Moonweavers until 4 days ago, Thaddeus replied. What do we have to lose? Silence stretched. Then Therion spoke, his voice rough. What do I need to do? Shift, Thaddeus said simply. Let your wolf call to hers. But be warned, if the bond isn't true, if she doesn't accept you completely, the calling will kill you both. She accepts me, Therion said with absolute certainty that made Lyrelai's trapped heart flutter. Does she? Even knowing her father orchestrated everything? Even knowing you cost her everything, her family, her position, nearly her life? The calling requires absolute trust, absolute love, any doubt, any resentment, and both spirits shatter. Lyrelai wanted to scream that she trusted him, loved him, but her voice remained locked away. I'll do it, Therion said. Brother, Rosalie began, let me stay. She might need familiar voices. Everyone leave, except you, he said to Rosalie. You can stay. The room emptied slowly. When only Rosalie remained, Lyrali felt Therion kneel beside her again. I know you probably can't hear me, he said softly, but if you can, if any part of you is listening, know this. I love you. Not as a king loves a useful mate, not as an alpha loves a powerful bloodline. I love you as Therion loves Lyrelai, the girl who chose the servant to spare us both humiliation. The woman who stood against my brother despite not knowing her own power. The mate who owns my wolf so completely I can't breathe without you. She felt him shift, his bones cracking and reforming. Then came the calling, not a howl but something deeper, older. It resonated through dimensions she didn't know existed, pulling at the threads that connected her scattered consciousness. Come home, his wolf called to hers. Come home to me. Her wolf, trapped between forms, stirred for the first time in days. It pressed against the barriers holding it, desperate to answer. Trust me, his call continued. Let go, and trust me to catch you. The letting go was terrifying. She'd been holding herself together through sheer will, afraid that if she released control, she'd dissolve entirely. But his call was persistent, warm, safe. Lirali let go. She fell through darkness and light, through forms and void, her consciousness shattering into a million pieces. But before she could scatter to nothing, golden threads caught her. Therion's love made manifest, weaving her back together piece by piece. When she opened her eyes, her real eyes, she was looking up at a massive black wolf with golden eyes full of tears only wolves could cry. Beside him, Rosalie knelt, her face wet with relief. Hello, my king, Lyrale whispered, her voice hoarse but human. The wolf shifted instantly, and then Therion was holding her, sobbing into her neck with relief that shook his entire frame. Never again, he swore between gasps. Never again will I hide anything from you. Good, she managed, her hand finding his hair. Because we have a throne to reclaim and a father to deal with. The Great Hall had been transformed for the Lunar Championship, the ancient rite where an Alpha King's rule could be challenged through combat. Therion stood in the ritual circle, no longer hiding as Kale the servant, but revealed in his full power, tall, commanding, every inch the rightful king. Darius stood opposite him, confident despite the loss of their father's blessing. Between them, Lirali held the Moonstone, the artifact that would seal the victor's right to rule. But another figure emerged from the shadows, Lord Thornwood, her father, wearing ceremonial robes she'd never seen before. You sure you want her holding that? Darius taunted. The untrained Moonweaver? She might accidentally kill us both. I trust her, Therion said simply. Even knowing her father orchestrated everything? Darius smiled. Oh yes, Lord Thornwood and I have an arrangement. He delivers the Moonweaver power. I give him control of the southern territories. Lyralee's hands tightened on the Moonstone, but she kept her face neutral. In the weeks since her awakening, she'd been training intensively with Elder Thaddeus, learning to control her gift. She could now see and manipulate the threads that connected all wolves, could strengthen or weaken pack bonds, could even temporarily sever a wolf from their human side. The rules are simple, Elder Thaddeus announced to the gathered packs. Combat continues until death or submission. No weapons save tooth and claw. No interference from any pack member. His eyes lingered on Liralai. The Moonweaver serves only as witness and seal. Both brothers shifted simultaneously, Therion into a massive black wolf, Darius into one of mottled gray. They circled each other while hundreds of wolves watched in tense silence. Darius struck first, using the brutal techniques that had won him the throne through treachery. But Therion had spent months in hiding, months watching and learning his brother's weaknesses. Where Darius expected the noble fighter he'd known, he found instead a wolf who'd learned to survive in shadows. The battle was vicious. Blood splattered the ritual stones as they tore into each other with primordial fury. Lirali stood perfectly still, the moonstone growing warm in her hands as it responded to the violence. Then she felt it. Something wrong in the pack threads. Her eyes snapped to her father, who was weaving his hands in subtle patterns. You bound my power for years, she said quietly, her voice carrying despite the combat. Now you think to control it? Lord Thornwood smiled. I made you, daughter. Every bound thread, every suppressed transformation, it all led to this moment. Your power, properly directed, will reshape the world. My power, Lyralee corrected, is mine alone. She felt him pulling at her threads, trying to direct her energy toward Therion, to weaken him in the fight. But Thornwood had made a crucial error. He understood the theory of Moonweaver power, but not its heart. Did Mother know? Lyralee asked, even as she began unweaving his influence. When she died birthing Rosalie, did she know what you'd done to me? Your mother was weak, Thornwood spat. She wanted to let your power manifest naturally. I knew better. I knew control was everything. No. Rosalie's voice rang out from the crowd. Mother knew exactly what you were. She told me before she died. She said to protect Liralie from you. The distraction cost everyone. Darius, seeing an opening, lunged for Therion's throat. But Therion twisted, using his brother's momentum against him. They rolled across the ritual circle in a tangle of fury and desperation. When they separated, Darius wasn't moving, but neither was Therion. No! Liralie dropped the moonstone, racing to where her mate lay in an expanding pool of blood. A silver blade protruded from between his ribs, not Darius's blade, but one that bore her father's seal. You threw it, she whispered, staring at Thornwood in horror. You violated sacred law. I adapted the plan, her father said calmly. With both brothers dead, the kingdom needs leadership. A Moonweaver regent, guided by wise counsel. Guided by you. Liralie's voice had gone deadly quiet. She pressed her hands to Therion's wound, feeling his life ebbing away. You would kill your daughter's mate for power? I would sacrifice anything for the greater good. Then let me show you sacrifice. Liralie closed her eyes and reached for her power differently than ever before. Not pulling on the threads that connected wolves, but on the thread that connected her soul to Therion's. Through their mate bond, she felt his spirit beginning to separate from his body, but she also felt something else. The threads that connected her to every wolf present, including her father. And she understood with crystal clarity what she had to do. A Moonweaver's greatest power, she said, her voice echoing with harmonics, isn't to control threads, but to share them. She began pulling life force, not just her own, but volunteered fragments from every wolf who chose to give. Cassius stepped forward first, offering his thread. Then Marcus, then Rosalie, then dozens of others, even some who had supported Darius. Stop, Thornwood commanded. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, Liralie replied, weaving the offered life force into Therion's fading spirit. I'm choosing love over power. The hall erupted in golden light as hundreds of threads converged, each wolf offering a small piece of their strength to save their true king. The silver blade dissolved, consumed by the pure energy of pack unity. Therion gasped, his eyes flying open, not gold, but every color at once, reflecting the gift of his pack. This is impossible. Thornwood staggered backward. The texts never mentioned. The texts were written by those who sought to control Moonweavers, Elder Thaddeus said quietly. Not by Moonweavers themselves. The true power was always meant to unite, not divide. Liralie stood, helping Therion to his feet. Together, they faced Lord Thornwood, who suddenly looked very small and alone. You have a choice, father, Liralie said. Submit to your rightful king and accept exile, or experience what happens when a Moonweaver truly severs threads, Therion finished, his voice carrying alpha command. Thornwood looked around the hall, searching for allies, but found only condemnation in every face. Even those who had conspired with him stepped back, unwilling to stand against the united pack. I submit, he said finally, the words ash in his mouth. Then go, Liralie commanded, and never return. As her father fled the hall, Rosalie moved to stand beside her sister. I'm sorry about father, she said quietly. He made his choices, Liralie replied, then turned to address the gathered packs. We all have choices. Today, you chose unity over division, love over power. This is the kingdom we'll build together. The moonstone, lying forgotten on the floor, suddenly blazed with light. It rose on its own, floating to hover between Therion and Liralie. The stone accepts dual rulers, Thaddeus announced in wonder. Not seen since the First Age, the Alpha King and the Moonweaver Queen, bound as equals. The coronation was set for the next full moon, 3 days hence. The castle, Therion's true home, not the servant quarters, buzzed with preparation. But Lyrelei couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She stood on the balcony overlooking the northern mountains, her power letting her see the threads of every wolf for miles. Most glowed with healthy light, but at the edges of her perception, she sensed darkness gathering. "You're worried," Therion said, joining her. He wore the royal leathers now, looking every inch the king he was born to be. Father wouldn't give up so easily. He spent years planning this. Let him try to return. We'll face him together. But that night, Lyrelei's fears materialized in the worst possible way. She woke not to assassins or armies, but to an empty bed and a note written in Therion's hand. "My love, your father has Rosalie. He's taken her to Howling Peak, where Moonweaver power is weakest. If I don't come alone by dawn, he'll kill her. This is my fault. I should have had him imprisoned, not exiled. Don't follow. I won't risk losing you. Forever yours." Rage and terror warred in Lyrelei's chest. She reached through their bond, trying to sense him, but found only shadows. Howling Peak's cursed ground was already affecting their connection. "Marcus!" She stormed through the castle, still in her night clothes. "Gather everyone. We're going to Howling Peak." "My queen, that place is where my grandmother died, where moonweavers lose their power. I know." She turned to face the gathering wolves. "But I'm not just a moonweaver anymore. I'm your queen, and I'm asking for your help. What do you need?" Cassius stepped forward, now her loyal guard. "I need volunteers. Wolves willing to lend me their strength, their threads, their very essence if necessary." One by one they stepped forward, not just warriors, but servants, craftsmen, even the kitchen staff who remembered Therion's kindness when he'd hidden among them. Within minutes, she had over 100 volunteers. "We run as one pack," she commanded, "and we bring our family home." The journey to Howling Peak took them through territories that grew progressively more desolate. The mountain itself was a tooth of black stone jutting from the earth, its peak perpetually shrouded in mist that absorbed magic like a void. As they climbed, Lyrelei felt her moonweaver power diminishing, the threads growing faint. But something else grew stronger. The bonds she'd forged through choice and love, not magic. At the summit, they found a scene from nightmares. Therion knelt in chains at the center of a stone circle, the special bindings draining his wolf essence. Rosalie was tied to a post, unconscious but breathing. And Lord Thornwood stood between them, but he wasn't alone. Dozens of rogues surrounded him, wolves who'd been cast out from their packs, wolves who had nothing to lose. "Hello, daughter," Thornwood said calmly. "I wondered when you'd arrive." "This ends now," Lyrelei said. "Does it? Your power doesn't work here. This mountain was where the first moonweavers were executed, their blood soaking into the stones, creating a permanent void. You're just an ordinary wolf here." "Then it's a good thing I brought extraordinary wolves with me." Her pack spread out behind her, but Thornwood laughed. 100 against my rogues? They fight without honor, without rules. They'll tear you apart." "Father." Rosalie's voice was weak but clear. She was awake. "You're wrong about everything." "Silence, child." "No." Rosalie struggled against her bonds. "Mother's journal. I found it. She wasn't weak. She was a moonweaver too, but different. She could do something you never knew about." Thornwood's face went white. "Impossible." "She could share her power," Rosalie continued. "Not control it, not manipulate it, but give it freely. She gave it to Lyrelei before she died, doubling her potential, and she gave it to me too." "You're lying." Rosalie's eyes began to glow silver. "Am I?" The mountain began to tremble. The void that had absorbed magic for centuries suddenly had two Moonweaver's power flooding into it, more than it could consume. Now, Lyrelai commanded. Her pack attacked as one, but not with violence. Instead, they formed a living chain, each wolf touching another, creating a network that Lyrelai and Rosalie could use. "This is what you never understood, Father," Lyrelai said, as she wove their threads together. "Power isn't meant to be hoarded. It's meant to be shared." Through the chain of willing wolves, the sisters channeled their combined power directly into the mountain itself. The void that had consumed magic for generations suddenly overflowed, centuries of absorbed power erupting outward. Every wolf present, rogue, loyal, or uncertain, was caught in the explosion of pure energy. But instead of destroying, it transformed. The rogues' corruption burned away, leaving them clean and whole. The loyal pack grew stronger, their bonds deepening. And Lord Thornwood, he stood at the epicenter, his ambitions and manipulations laid bare for all to see. "You killed our mother," Rosalie said quietly. "Not in childbirth. You poisoned her when you learned she was teaching me about my heritage." "She would have ruined everything," Thornwood said desperately. "The power needed to be controlled. The power needed to be free," Lyrelai interrupted. She walked toward Therion, the chains holding him crumbling at her approach. The mountain's void had been filled, its curse broken. Just like love needs to be free. Therion stood, his strength returning, and together they faced Lord Thornwood. "You have one chance," Therion said. "Submit to judgment or dash. Never." Thornwood pulled out a blade, not silver, but something darker. Void stone, carved from this mountain's heart. One cut, and even a Moonweaver dies. He lunged at Lyrelai, the blade aimed for her heart. Three things happened simultaneously. Therion moved to intercept. Rosalie channeled every thread she could reach, and Lyrelai did something unexpected. She didn't dodge. The blade pierced her chest, exactly where her heart should be. But instead of blood, light poured out. Not just her light, but the combined light of every wolf who'd chosen to stand with her. "You forgot something, Father," she said, the blade dissolving in her chest. "I'm not just a Moonweaver anymore. I'm eternal mated. You can't kill one half of an eternal bond." The light consumed Lord Thornwood, not killing him, but stripping him of everything. His wolf, his strength, his very connection to the pack structure. When it faded, he was just a man, old and broken and alone. "Mercy," he whispered. "Yes," Lyrelai agreed. "Mercy. You'll live, but as a human. Never able to shift, never able to feel the pack bonds you tried so hard to control." Thornwood collapsed, the weight of his punishment crushing him more than death ever could. 3 days later, the coronation proceeded as planned, but it wasn't just Therion and Lyrelai who were crowned. "By ancient law and new precedent," Elder Thaddeus announced, "I present your rulers, King Therion Nightfall, Queen Lyrelai Nightfall, and Princess Rosalie, the first Moonweaver guardian in 500 years." The three stood together, the Alpha King, the Moonweaver Queen, and the young guardian who would protect the balance between power and freedom. "Ready to rule?" Therion murmured to Lyrelai. "With you?" "Always." "And you, little sister?" Lyrelai asked Rosalie. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it." As the packs howled their acceptance to the moon, Lyrelai felt the threads of connection spreading beyond their kingdom, touching every wolf, every pack, offering not control, but unity. "What do you see?" Therion asked, noticing her distant expression. "The future," she said. "A world where power serves love, not the other way around." The cursed daughter had become a blessed queen. The hidden king had reclaimed his throne. The forgotten sister had found her purpose. And together, they would reshape not just their kingdom, but the very nature of what it meant to be pack. Lord Thornwood watched from his exile among humans, powerless to do anything but witness the golden age his daughters would build. The greatest punishment of all for a man who'd tried to control destiny, only to discover that love was always stronger than power. The moon witnessed it all, full and bright, blessing the union that had transformed from desperate choice into eternal love.